Welcome back to another episode of Timebreaker Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel, joined by
Anthony, and we are here to present Phase 4 and Beyond, our topic of discussion today.
Yes, of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now expanding to TV with the addition of Disney Plus. I think we kind of assumed that they were going to go this route once Disney Plus was announced and they started, we were going to make these shows normalized, and it just created a lot of opportunities for Marvel to not only have these movies, but kind of take a little step back and make these either limited series or TV shows focusing on some of the characters that weren't like big enough of stars to get their own movies, but were still unique and interesting enough to get their own like side story in the MCU. So with this new expansion into Phase 4 after wrapping up the Infinity Saga, as we talked about in our last episode, the first piece of content that came out was WandaVision.
Yeah, and I remember when they first announced it back in... Oh man, I don't even remember when it was announced, but I do remember, like, this was pre-Endgame, pre-Infinity War, so we weren't quite sure what it was, and so just the idea of it was interesting, and then after those releases, it was even more interesting on how this was going to happen.
Yeah, because Vision was dead.
Spoilers.
Yeah, we already talked about it. But yeah, this was it is a limited series, so it's only the set amount of episodes. And I gotta say, it's the most, like, out there of the MCU shows for me, personally. Like, it's got a very unique format, to say the least.
Yeah, it's definitely unique, especially when you look at Falcon, Winter Soldier, and Loki. Like, its approach to its episodic format is, yeah, again, interesting to say the least. But really, it's unique.
Yeah, like, every episode is basically formatted around a different, like, era of TV. Like, they do a 60s themed episode, 70s themed, 80s, 90s, early 2000s sitcoms, and they even go into like the 2010s and do like those like reality TV where you like sit in front of the camera and talk as if like you're talking to like somebody who's recording you off to the side. And so they really like touch on all those like eras, and they like play with them and kind of do spoofs on them, which I think is kind of funny, interesting looking back at like how TV has kind of evolved.
Right, and I thought it was super interesting, just the fact that, like, going into the show, we really didn't know what it had going for it, and, like, as it was airing, we're trying to figure out why these episodes are the way they are, and what's going on in these episodes, and, like, I think it was, like, 4 or 5 episodes in that we finally figured out what was going on, and then you're really just, like, you're shocked, because, honestly, I feel like it could have not worked.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
this format, the plot, it couldn't have, like, there were ways this couldn't have worked, and then somehow all the pieces actually end up coming together.
Yeah, and like for me, like that was definitely like the concept and everything that they were advertising. Really, I wasn't super into it right off the bat, and I didn't even watch this as it was coming out. I think I started watching it like right before Falcon and Winter Soldier, because I wanted to like get like in the loop of everything, and it really kind of took a while. Like I'd have to say, like it was kind of like a slow start for me up until like around episode 4. That's usually where all these Marvel shows kind of hit form, is episode 4, at least to me. And once like they hit that, then I could kind of see where they were going and what they were doing, and then I was really intrigued.
Yeah, and really, its switch between present day and inside the dome was, I really liked it. It was something I wasn't expecting when I saw ads for it, and I do believe I did watch it as it aired, so I was in the same boat. Like, the first few episodes, I had to, like, convince myself to keep watching, hoping that it was all going to lead into something else, and thankfully it did.
Yeah, it definitely was very like a kind of like a rough start, and then like you, I didn't know what the heck they were doing with the present day stuff. Like they kind of shied that away from the promotional material, and even like how they bounce back and forth some of the flashbacks I thought was interesting. And the way they played with our expectations a lot, especially with like certain cameos and teasing different characters, I thought was cool. And I originally thought it was going to be kind of like a throwaway thing, but it actually had some pretty lasting effects on the MCU.
Yeah, that's actually something I had completely forgotten about. Yeah, when this show was coming out, I totally thought, like, it was going to Disney Plus, and it really wasn't going to be super duper relevant in case people didn't watch it. But instead, I feel like Marvel went the other way around, and they were like, no, this is actually going to be important, and if you don't watch it, it's going to make watching the rest of Phase 4 harder.
Yeah, they're definitely like making these Disney Plus shows mandatory viewing for you keeping up with the MCU, if you will. I don't know if they're going to keep that up with the animation, but definitely with these live actions, it really is keeping to that.
What If is the only animated so far announced, correct?
I think so, yeah.
Right. I mean, personally, it's kind of cool because they didn't keep their past like live action shows connected to the MCU. Like Agents of Shield was always
Right.
relying on the Avengers games, but whatever Agents of Shield did was never translated back to the movies, and that's so why I didn't watch it.
Nor did I.
I I was told that there were cool things from the movies that crossed into it, but that anything that happened in the show didn't go the other way.
Yeah, and that's where these shows differ. Like WandaVision, I mean, she becomes the Scarlet Witch. We get Vision's technically alive now again. And just like it kind of opens up this whole world again to even more magic than it was before.
Right, I feel like these shows are actually like game changers for the way that the storytelling in the cinematic universe is going to go now. But I'm not exactly sold as the best way to do it either. Like, they're calling them extended movies, but if these were movies, there's a lot of things they would have cut to really get to the point faster.
Yeah, but I think like the format it offers a little bit more like opportunity to tease more stuff and just develop characters. I mean, I'm pretty sure they basically springboarded the Marvels off of this show, and we got a deep dive into Scarlet Witch that we've never seen before. Even Vision, even though he's like kind of real, kind of not. But we really got to see like her inner workings and a little bit more of her past and what she's been dealing with and her pain and something that I realized after watching the show, at least from my perspective, and I thought was really cool, is that Wanda's actually the bad guy. Like she's like this villain and is doing bad things,
really,
but they made her
really
the
like that
protagonist also. It's kind of interesting how they did that.
That twist was definitely not something I saw coming, but it was also I appreciated when it happened because it's not something you normally see happen.
Yeah, but it's still like the way they pulled it off, like it makes sense, like how she's just like this person in grieving and just wants to go off and deal and do her own thing at the cost of whatever.
On a negative though, I mean, coming from phase 3 heading into 4, the way this phase has started is definitely different. I'm not exactly sure if in the best way it's positive. Like, I'm so used to phases starting out on a bang.
Yeah.
Or at least because it's been so long since beginning of a phase. I mean, phase 3 started in 2016, and phase 2 before that was in 2013. So, it's been 5 years since the beginning of a phase, and so phase 3 started with Civil War, and so with this phase starting with WandaVision / technically Black Widow, because Black Widow started the
Films,
the movie theater films. Like, it's definitely a different take.
Yeah, and I think the only way to like compare it is like while it is a continuation of the story and they're continuing on with these like storylines with a lot of characters, it does seem kind of like a overall like we have to hit the reset because there's no ultimate threat we're building up to. Like I feel like phase 1, 2, and 3 we're building to something, and maybe they're building something with 4, 5, and whatnot, but we don't see it yet. So it's kind of like setting those roots, and they might be just like a slow start with at least kind of how we look back. Phase 1 kind of was now too.
Right, and I feel like that's where we're heading with phase 4. Is that's really going to look like a build up to something else maybe later on, and it was why for me it was super important that Endgame felt like a conclusion, because it's not that I don't believe in Marvel that they can't, like, it's not that I think they're going to fail. It's just the idea that what if they do fail? What if the next 2, 3 phases, what the next 5 films are just terrible? Like, I want to be able to look back at the Infinity Saga and say that was a complete chunk. Like, that was a complete section of film. And if you stop watching at Endgame, you'll be able to pretty much be fine. Like, you've seen it all. and you got a great story experience, whatever you got from it.
Yeah, and I mean, you and I kind of treat that way too in our home release purchases. I mean, you and I were really adamant about owning the Infinity Saga as one thing on Blu-ray. Like, we each have all the movies as our own copies. But like, and you and I have talked about moving forward, since it's kind of like an added thing, and we have our story together, and we have it all as a one thing, and we don't need any more of it to complete that story. We're kind of going more pick and choosy with how we're going to be picking up these movies in the future.
Well, especially with the fact that now with Disney Plus, these movies, so the movies are going to go to 4K disc, but I mean, Mandalorian's been out for 2 years now almost, and it still has not been given a physical release, and I
I don't
don't
even think
think
it
at this
will.
point it's going. I mean, unless Marvel really changes, well, not even Marvel, if Disney changes direction, but I think they are throwing everything into Disney Plus, and so for us as collectors, like the shows kind of mark the end of an era. Like not everything in these phases are going to be released, and so having a complete physical collection of it, like yeah, you'll have the movies, but with how many series they're announcing, I feel like it's really going to like damper that experience if you try to just watch the like whole phase 4, whole phase 5 in the future, watching them on physical media, because I don't think we'll have them.
Yeah, so and that just makes it a little bit easier for us to kind of pick and choose with like, oh, if I really like Spider-Man, I'll pick that up. But if Black Widow didn't really hit for me, I don't need to pick that one up. Because it's still gonna be on Disney Plus eventually, right?
Right, and especially with how fast they're going to Disney Plus. I mean, I think Black Widow hits Disney Plus in October, and
Wow.
I mean, Endgame came out in April and didn't go to Disney Plus until November. I mean, the way the way everything's being released really, I think, just changes the way that Disney and Marvel are looking at Phase 4. And while people like me and you definitely aren't seeing eye to eye with Disney on this, it's kind of just the way every studio's going. And so you either hop on board or get left in the dust.
Yeah, but I mean, overall with WandaVision, I mean, I thought it was solid. Like, it did what it had to do, and towards the end, I kind of was getting more into it, so that was good. As if it stayed where it was in the beginning, I would have been a little bit disappointed. But I think it ended on a positive.
It ended on a positive. It definitely didn't end the way I was expecting it to. And I really didn't like what they did with I can't think of his name. The guy that played Quicksilver in
Oh,
X-Men.
Evan Peters.
Yeah, I really did not like what they did with his character. I
Yeah,
felt like that was
yeah.
such a perfect opportunity to
Just
tease
segue
the
into
multiverse, and instead it really, like, the producers, the directors, they all knew who he was, and they knew that audience, at least for the most part, audiences knew who he was.
right.
And so I felt it was kind of insulting that, and maybe the point was to diverge from expectations, but for
Probably
me it was really, it was a
wasted
it was a
opportunity.
waste.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
And I
Uh,
think out of the whole show, that was really the only thing that I really sat at the end and went, that was a disappointment.
yeah.
Where I feel like everything else was pretty good.
Yeah. I know.
And overall, I'd say decent start to Phase 4.
Yeah.
I I think it's my second favorite Marvel show so far.
Yeah. I mean, it's tied for my second. I mean, 2 and 3 are really interchangeable for me.
But moving on to our next Phase 4 title, since we can't just say movies anymore, it's a title,
Yep.
is Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which came out this spring.
Yeah. I mean, this first episode came out and like, I mean, it started off with some action, which I wasn't really there for. But what I really liked about the first episode was they really like were taking it back and just like getting into the headspaces of the characters. Like, you see the weight that Sam is dealing with, like being that successor to Cap, but not really wanting to feel like, not really thinking he's worthy of it, so he just kind of hands the responsibility off. And then you see Bucky trying to like come back into society but still living with his like Winter Soldier past. I thought it was a really good like character episode and a start to the series.
Yeah, I thought it was a really cool grip, at least for the story. It really gripped onto things we'd seen in the movies, and it kind of explored those elements. And this is a show that I feel I was most excited for. Outside of Loki, like, this was the one I was super excited for. WandaVision was not the one I was excited
Yeah.
for. Like, I was ready to watch it because it was Marvel, but I wasn't, like, sitting there excited for it. And so when Falcon and Winter Soldier dropped, I was ready for that. And
Mm-hmm.
overall, as to complete 6 episodes, for me, I feel like it dropped the ball somewhere towards the end. It really had a good thing going leading up to things, and then some of the decisions they made, just, I don't know, wasn't a huge fan.
Yeah, like I mean, there's parts of the show where I'm like, I think is really awesome, and then there's other parts of the show where I'm like, that's really bad. Like, I think the whole buddy cop dynamics between Sam and Bucky has always been really awesome. I think how they handle this new Captain America and how he leads into becoming U.S. agent. I think he's a really interesting character. I mean, we're supposed to hate him, and I mean, he does a solid job of acting the part, and uh, the way we face look into Bucky and his past and what he's dealing with, and how they move Sam into the role of Captain America, I think was really good. But and then Zemo, I thought was awesome in the show too.
Now, I thought Zemo himself was great, but I felt like he was underused. Like,
Yeah, there was like an
so
episode where he
granted,
kind of like
I
pieced
was
out.
not. So I wasn't watching this week by week. I kind of started watching it and then like jumped towards it again when it was about to finish. And I saw so much on social media about Zemo, thinking he was gonna play a huge role in it with the whole dancing scene. And then yeah, it really he kind of just vanished out of the series randomly, and he never
Yeah.
came back. And the whole twist with Agent Carter, I'm sorry, I wasn't the biggest fan of that reveal either.
Oh
Where she's
yeah.
revealed as a villain, I don't know. For
Totally made
me,
zero
it
sense to me.
was yeah, it kind of just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I will agree with you. Like Zemo, I thought it was cool when he was there, and then I think it was like around episode 5, he kind of just dipped, and
I
I
think he
was
dipped before that point, because episode 4 ended with the blood on the street.
yeah.
So I think he was gone around episode 4, like the beginning of
Oh
episode
yeah,
4.
yeah. So I mean, yeah. So I was definitely missing him towards the end of the half of that, and then also to me, like they teased this really cool thing with Bucky, how he killed that dude's son and would have to like face that, and I was like, this is the scene. This is gonna be the heavy emotional scene, and they were saving it for the last episode, and then it happened, and it lasted like 5 seconds, and I was like, what the
I think
hell?
that's just been a problem Marvel's had with these shows, and I think it's just a problem a lot of shows have, period, is wrapping things up. I mean, especially in a sense where either A, there's another season, which is a lot of shows, but with these shows in particular, they're leading into a grander universe where these things now need to connect back. And so I think that also kept the finale back. Uh, I'll be honest, wasn't a fan of Sam's Captain America suit. And it wasn't that it looked bad, it was that he he himself looked super uncomfortable. Like it looked
Oh.
almost like gripped to his skin. Like it was so tight and I'm like it looks so uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, it is like a TV budget, I guess, and it's kind of rushed. So hopefully, like for Captain America 4, it might be a little bit more updated and well
Right.
thought out for. But yeah, and I gotta say, like, absolutely the worst part of the show, and it really brings it down, is the villain and what the hell those kids are doing. Like, I hated them so much.
I just feel like the rest of the show kind of, I mean, it acknowledged they were there, but it kind of just like was trying to be its own thing, and then they went, "Oh right, we introduced these people. Let's throw them back into the mix all of a sudden." Oh, and let's like, it really felt like they were being used as plot devices.
Yeah, and just the way, like, they wanted us to care about them, and I just couldn't. Like, I really just did not care.
I think they were one of the main reasons why this show didn't hit the top of my list.
Yeah.
Actually, for me, Falcon the Winter Soldier, no matter how good it started, and don't get me wrong, I really liked the U.S. agent and how he was introduced. Like, I really like that. I like Bucky and his relationship and everything like that. But overall, as a season, eh,
Yeah.
it was definitely the bottom of my list.
Yeah. Is that more a limited series? Because now we're getting Captain America 4, you would think?
That's the only. So, WandaVision's been confirmed we're not getting another season.
Right. And
They have technically said we're not getting another season, but at the same time, I won't be shocked if we get another season. But at the same
that's
time,
fair.
he's now Captain America. It doesn't. I don't know. He doesn't feel like a Disney Plus title.
Right. I mean, they did do that whole thing at the end where they changed the title to Captain America and the Winter Soldier, but yeah, I definitely think they're going to move it more into theatrical now.
But again, you lose things when you go theatrical. I mean,
Yeah.
Falcon and Winter Soldier on Disney Plus probably runs roughly 5 hours long. You move it to theaters, and now you're limited to 2.5 hours, typically. Yeah. I mean, Endgame was the rare exception of a Marvel movie that actually cracked that 2.5 hours and went pretty much a half hour over it.
Yeah.
And I don't think, especially in the current conditions of theaters, I think it's really hard for them to, I mean, even for Disney to put something in production that's only going to be solely for theaters, not knowing the future of that. And so I don't know if they would go with a theatrical release or if they'll just do another, miniseries, but like remove the Winter Soldier or something in the second season.
Yeah, I don't know how they're gonna do that moving forward.
I mean, going into a later discussion, but I mean, the box office grosses for Black Widow, especially for being one of the main 6 original Avengers, I mean, it's disappointing to say the least.
Yeah.
And it also it's kind of scary when you look at it as a financial standpoint, because how do you make $200 million films when the box office, receipts for it aren't matching up?
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm kind of concerned that because of this, Disney's going to actually push everything towards Disney Plus. They're going to just want everything to be on Disney Plus.
Maybe. I mean, we're just going to have to wait and see. But, I mean, you bring up Black Widow, and that's the next... Not the next topic. I'm an idiot.
Well, it's technically not the next topic, but I feel like we've already went into it, and I would actually love to end this conversation with Loki and the future.
Yeah,
so let's actually talk about Black
Widow.
Widow.
You're right. I think Loki does kind of tease the future a little better. So, yeah, let's go into Black Widow. I was right. My hunch was right. Okay. So,
yeah, we're skipping forward a little bit. I don't think people,
you
as an audience,
you guys have all seen all this stuff. You love Marvel anyway. All right. So Black Widow came out. This movie was supposed to come out a long time ago. I mean, if you really think about it, like, we were supposed to see Valentina in this post-credit scene before Falcon and Winter Soldier, right?
Yes, because this was supposed to come out May 1st, and Falcon and Winter Soldier, I believe, was scheduled for fall 2020 before delays.
And, I mean, I don't know if they just threw that post-credit scene in now, like after shooting and everything, now that we know who she was or whatever, but I just thought that's a weird way it lined up.
Personally, I'm going to go with a no. They did not go and reshoot anything because, well, I don't know. I want to believe that the film always had a post-credit scene because it's always been a Marvel tradition,
right.
Because if it hadn't been there,
I don't know what
either
it
they
been.
took something else out or there just wasn't one again. And even Far From Home ended with a post-credit scene. The only Marvel movie that hasn't was literally Endgame, and that's because it was Endgame.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so going into the film itself, I've read the weirdest article. It is one of 5 Marvel movies that has an actual credits in the opening.
Oh, like an opening credit sequence?
This was the one. It was actually jarring when it happened because I was so not used to it, and I didn't like it. I'm like, nope. And then I was reminded that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and Volume 1 both have it, and I'm like, yeah, but they don't, I don't know, they don't stick out as much to me.
Yeah, I mean, the first Guardians is just a dance number, that's why, but I was seeing, like, especially right after I saw it, like, everybody was blown up on TikTok, how they're like, this is such a cool opening credits, because it's basically just a montage of all this, what this organization does, and I guess people were a fan of that. To me, it's kind of lazy storytelling to exposition shove everything in your opening credits. I personally don't even really like opening credits. I think it kind of takes you out of it and makes you realize, oh yeah, we're watching a movie.
I feel like opening credits are for TV shows. And it's always what I've associated them with. And so when I see them in movies, when I see him in movies, I don't know, it really just throws me off.
Yeah.
And it really depends for me. I guess it depends on the way they're done, because if you go and watch Zack Snyder's Justice League, they technically have credits at the beginning,
Yeah.
but again, the way it's presented, I don't feel like it like dampened the experience. Where I feel like with Black Widow, there's so much going on behind each of the names that you're kind of losing what's going on. Like for me, I
Yeah.
was so focused on what is all this text showing up and trying to read that while also trying to look at what's behind it, and I feel like it dampened the experience for me.
Yeah. I mean, definitely like the opening credits as a whole is like a technique and something that was introduced, like especially like with way older cinema. Like they used to like front end the films with the credits as opposed to
Oh
put
yeah,
them at
if
the
you
end.
go and watch
Like any
anything,
old Disney movie, you get like the
old Disney
slideshows
movies,
of everything. But yeah, up to your point, it is how you execute it, and there are really creative ways to do it that I feel like Black Widow didn't. I'll give you a perfect example. Deadpool has amazing opening credits.
Deadpool does have an amazing credits, and again, I think it's just the way it's presented, and the way Black Widow presented it is that like it's not a normal thing in the MCU, so it stuck out to me, and the way how it was actually going over something important, I think also just made it so I didn't like it, because in Guardians,
Nothing's really
what's
going on.
happening in the background, again, you're so focused on what's in the background, but if you missed it, let's say you were just wanting to know who's it directed by, who's it starring, if you actually read all that stuff, I don't think the movie's any different.
No, because it's just kind of like throwaway action. Where this is like kind of pretty important like story beats on what this organization's all about. But um, going in, I also like had to. It was like weird. Like I had to like readjust my mind because I mean there was Endgame, which was Endgame, and then right after was Spider-Man, which was like kind of tying up everything with the bow in the Infinity Saga. So
It's
I was
really just an epilogue.
yeah, we talked
That's
about that.
what Far From Home is.
That's what we talked about last episode. But this one was like the first like standalone like Marvel movie that didn't really connect to everything like as a huge like inner working web, and I was like, oh yeah, and it suffers from all those problems that those older Marvel movies has, like a weak villain. Um,
Weak is an understatement.
Yeah,
I felt
this
the
dude
villain
was-
was an absolute joke.
both of them were so bad in my opinion.
The movie felt more focused on Black Widow as an individual, which is fine. There's nothing against
This is what it's
that.
supposed to
But
be.
it definitely wasn't what I was expecting when the trailers showed Taskmaster, and I've even seen like granted, again, me and him, we're not comic book readers.
Right.
But for me, like I've seen Taskmaster in the Avengers game, and I mean, underwhelming there too. And I'm like, after seeing in the Avengers game, I was like, he's gonna be underwhelming in this, and oh well, and she was underwhelming.
Yeah.
That was a very interesting twist, going from the Avengers game where he was a man to the movie where she was a woman. I'm like, oh, interesting. I didn't see
Yeah.
that coming.
And I don't even think it's the same character. They just shoved it in that it's the daughter, I think.
Right.
Yeah, and to me, like also the most jarring thing was, I mean, I like Black Widow. I like Scarlett Johansson. I think she's done a great job with building this character, and she definitely has what it takes to carry a film on her own. But even in her own movie, I didn't feel like she was the best part. Like I liked the sister more than I liked Black Widow.
Right. It definitely felt, again, we're talking about building up Phase 4, and Black Widow, surprisingly, I mean, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but unintentionally does kind of build into Phase 4 because of the fact that the sister is now, she's prioritized in this movie. You really get behind her as a new character, and now that, Black Widow's dead, Scarlett Johansson is out, I think this is actually a really good. I would love to see another Black Widow movie, but with the sister taking the mantle.
Yeah, and I think they're setting up for her to be. I mean, she's probably gonna be portrayed as an antagonist at the beginning, and probably I'm guessing we'll switch sides when she gets to know Clint. But she's gonna be in Hawkeye.
That was a very interesting. Okay, going into the post-credit scene, I wasn't sure what they were going to do because she's dead.
Yeah.
And the first thing I thought when that scene started was, oh no, they're bringing Scarlett Johansson back from the dead.
Thank God
And
they didn't do that.
thankfully I was wrong. But like the way the scene started in the cemetery, I'm like, oh no, she's going to be standing there by the grave. And thank goodness that wasn't the case. I feel like it definitely would have just been like a slap in the face to Endgame and
Yeah.
audiences to be like, yeah, you saw her die, slap. Well, she's back now.
Yeah, but the end credit scene does a really good job of like setting up that Hawkeye show and getting us hyped for it. But going back into the movie, like I felt like
It doesn't belong in Phase 4.
no, I mean we already had this. Everybody's been talking about how like this movie's got a lot. It's had an uphill battle from the start because of its placement in time and in the canon because it takes place in between movies that have happened like way before, and yet it's only finally coming out now when it should have happened way before, and it's just like why it's kind of got that solo vibe.
To sum
like,
it
why
up
is
easily,
it happening?
it is so little way too late. Not only is the character dead, but the plot that it uses is in Phase 3. And so, to me, I was literally watching it, and I'm like, this would have been perfect in Phase 3. Why didn't this come out between Civil War and Infinity War?
Yeah,
It would have been a perfect film because it really sets up her character leading into Infinity War, leading into Endgame. I think it would have built her character better by the time Endgame came out. But instead, it's kind of shoehorned in at the beginning of Phase 4 because it didn't come out in time, or production on it just didn't get to where it needed. Like, honestly, this movie probably could have taken more importance in Captain Marvel. I feel like Captain Marvel could have came out whenever it wanted because she's in Endgame so little that you would have just seen her as a new character. And I think if Captain Marvel had been the start of Phase 4 where you got a solo film introducing her, I think it would have had way better impact because she's a brand new character. You've only seen her in an Avengers movie. Now we're going to, take you on a solo experience and let you learn this character.
yeah. I mean the thing about the Captain Marvel thing is because the first movie was set so far behind everything else. I think you would have gotten that same vibe too, where like, why do we care about any of this stuff? That's
I think you would have
happening?
gotten the same vibe, but I think you would have had a different vibe only because she was in Endgame. She is still alive, so she will
Yeah,
contribute to Phase 4.
that's true. But yeah, and I mean they introduced a decent amount of new characters here. Like I said, I really loved the sister. I thought she was really funny, had a unique like take on the world and everything, and just with her experiences, and had a cool dynamic with Black Widow. But the other ones, I didn't really care too much about, honestly.
Right. Again, they honestly weren't in the movie for as long as I thought they were going to be. I mean, they come in around the third act.
Yeah, I mean, lots of people talk about how they love Red Guardian. I'm like, he's that cliche brute comic relief. He's Wrecker from Bad
Yeah,
Batch, you know? Like that's
don't get me
exactly
wrong.
who he
He
is.
did. Yeah, he absolutely added some comic relief, but as a character, I feel like he really wasn't. I don't know. He wasn't in it enough for me to really get behind him.
Yeah. And then another thing, like, maybe this is just me, but it was a long intro. At least for me, it was a long intro. And it was a long intro of people I had no idea who the hell were. And so I'm like, why do I care? What is going on? Like,
It definitely
I didn't.
took me a second.
Yeah.
I was a little unsure of who everyone was, and then I finally settled in. And then you're right. It was a really long opening. It was one of those Battle of the Five Armies moments where you're like, whoa, the credits haven't even rolled yet.
Yeah.
But like a lot of film has happened before the credits rolled. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't even, like, put two and two that was Black Widow at the very beginning because her hair is a completely different color. And I'm like, oh, okay. And even when I figured out that it was her, I'm like, okay, but we kind of know her backstory. Well, who is everything else, and how does it come together? I think its only purpose is to establish that they had a family dynamic.
Right, I felt the purpose of the movie was not to showcase Black Widow, but to introduce the sister. I mean, it was really odd.
Yeah, I mean,
And not only that, like, everyone wanted a Black Widow movie for years because they just wanted to see what Budapest was. And then they're like,
they didn't even
yeah,
really do
we'll
that.
kind of, we'll say it. We won't show you because we don't have the budget to bring in Jeremy Renner as well. So we'll just say it. I mean, granted, if you had added him in, I don't think it would have stolen the spotlight, but I think, it's trying to be a solo film, and the moment you start adding other Avengers,
Then it would have been
no
a
longer...
Black Widow Hawkeye movie instead of a Black Widow movie. Yeah.
Now, granted, I would have loved to see that. Seeing the two of them meet, like, probably would have been great. Overall, though, not exactly skippable, but it's in the lower tier.
Yeah.
of MCU films, like rank wise.
Yeah. I mean,
Going into the box office of this thing, I mean, it started great. I mean, it made, 150 million dollars in its opening weekend.
then it had a second weekend.
But right now, again, we're in August and we're looking in the $300 million range. Granted, not including Disney Plus. And I mean, let's say it makes another 100 million. Even if it ends at 400 million in theaters, let's say it makes 100 million on Disney Plus. I mean, this is going to be the least profitable MCU movie probably since the early Phase 1 movies, because every movie since then has made above 600 million.
Right.
And so I think I'm not sure, again, we're going to see in later Marvel movies, but I'm not sure if this was either audiences have adapted to being at home because of the pandemic, or if this was seriously just a lot of people were like me and you going into this movie going, okay, why did you make this? Because she's dead, so what importance does this play?
Right.
And so I'm definitely interested to see the next few movies' box office performance and see like where we're sitting at when, these are new characters.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of factors to consider, and we won't really know until till later films. But
Well, right, because this was one of Disney's experimental films with day and date Disney Plus. Jungle Cruise has had the same thing. Both have made. I mean, Jungle Cruise made half of what Black Widow did on Disney Plus. I was actually shocked. Black Widow made 60 plus million on Disney Plus, and Jungle Cruise made 30 million. So the fact that Jungle Cruise was sitting only half of what Black Widow, I mean, I don't know if it has anything to say about the movie or just the fact that these numbers are super inconsistent. And I mean, it's just, I'm definitely interested to see what happens, because the next two Marvel movies, at least as of right now, have been confirmed for a 45-day theater run exclusive.
yeah, and I mean, yeah, we'll have to wait and see, I guess. But while Black Widow doesn't contribute a whole lot to the future of the MCU, you know what does? Loki.
Yeah, Loki was a shock. Like, I'll be honest, absolute shock. Was not expecting what at least the first 5 episodes of that show were.
Yeah,
Deliberately
took me
leaving
by
episode
surprise.
6 out
I didn't
because
know
I
what to
definitely
expect.
was not expecting episode 6.
Yeah, I mean, just all like the concept and what they were dealing with in the show is just very foreign and very different. But I think overall it's easily my favorite MCU show, and that goes to just a testament of Loki as a character and just the world building and how much this affects everything and the cool, fun things that they're able to play around with. I even watched the assembled episode or whatever they put out of the behind the scenes making the Loki show, and I thought that was really good. You can tell, like, Tom Hiddleston, he's really grown with his character for like over 10 years. He's an executive producer on the show. He loves this as much as we love him doing it, and you can tell he really cares and has a fun time with this.
Yeah, I mean, everything you said. I have not seen the assembled behind the scenes, but yeah, like this show contributes so much to the future of the MCU, and yeah, Loki as a character. I mean, having seen him grow as a character since Thor, leading into the Avengers movies and leading to his death in Infinity War. I mean, especially when you're sitting there in episode 1 and he's actually like being shown
Yeah.
events in his life that he hasn't lived through because of his other variant. I was like, oh no, are they going to show him die? And then he snuck back in and saw himself die, and
That's
it was
gotta
impactful.
screw you up, man.
But you want to know who was a surprise delight in that show?
Oh, I wonder who that
Owen
was.
Wilson. Wow.
Wow, you don't say. No, I loved him as Mobius. He's really, like, him and Tom, they got like such a cool dynamic going on. Like, I love that buddy cop relationship, and he's got some spunk to him a little bit too, and he has some dreams and passions of his own that I hope we get to see explored in the future. Like, I gotta see him. He's gotta say wow in season 2. B, I need to see that dude ride a jet ski. I just need to see it.
Yeah, I mean, after watching the end of season, okay, so the final episode of season 1, fairly big letdown. Again, it might contribute a lot in the future, but for now, as an individual episode, not knowing what's coming. I know it's building up to something, but at the same time, it doesn't fix the fact that it felt so underwhelming compared to the first 5 episodes of the show.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get to the final. So let's talk us through the first 5. What were you thinking?
All right. So episode 1, very interesting way to start it. I mean, I just loved the fact that it starts like immediately when he grabs the Tesseract, and you get to see him get caught, and especially like, I don't know, the first episode was so funny because there were so many things that were going on, like the guy that didn't grab the ticket, and then he gets like zapped, and then he's like, I have my ticket, and then I just love that.
You see, because it's weird, because we have to put ourselves back, because he's Avengers Loki. He's not this Loki that's gone through and had all this growth yet, and he still like thinks he's hot shit, and he thinks he's like the god of mischief and is destined to rule everybody, and then he's getting pwned like over and over in this episode, and he's completely like taken aback. Like he's like, how is this happening to me? I'm better than this, but he's not.
Literally. Right, and like the whole point of the episode was actually to prove that he's not this giant character that he thinks he is. Like he is way under what he thinks of himself. And, you know, introducing us to this new world, well, technically not a new world, but this new organization, I mean, it was just, I thought it was great. I mean, we don't see a lot of MCU building things up recently. I mean, Phase 3 was fairly contained. We knew who the villain was going to be, and I felt like Phase 3 kind of threw us in that direction. It knew what it was going towards and didn't do a whole lot of world building outside of it, where, at least with Loki as a show itself, I feel really expanded the universe and also, you know, introduced a new organization and the way that time works. And especially after Endgame, I felt it was important to have a show like this.
Yeah, and I mean, looking back even to the other Phase 4, like WandaVision was very contained in what Wanda's story was, and Black Widow, like we talked about, it was kind of in the back in the history. It didn't really contribute anything new. And then Falcon and Winter Soldier, while it was new, it still felt like very safe and by the books Marvel, where Loki, I felt like takes those risks and plays with time and introduces new things that affect us. And then at the end of that episode, they are like, who's the bad guy? Oh, it's another Loki. And you're like, oh, that's kind of weird, but it also kind of makes sense that Loki would be causing this mischief and screwing around with the TVA. That would give him a reason to have to go after another Loki.
Right, absolutely. And then, following episodes, just they built upon this. They really, really, really built upon this, and like the way episode 2 ends, just great. And I think it started off so good, and then it just was able to pull twist after twist, like just diverting expectations on what we thought this show might be. And in television today, it's really hard to do that.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on episode 3?
Is that the one where they're
stuck on the planet? Yeah, because for me, this is my least favorite episode.
So for me, it probably sits in my least favorite episode, but it's not necessarily saying it's a bad episode. But
no,
it took its sweet time, and you're sitting there. I don't know. This is what irks me about shows and movies. It's like, if I know that there's 6 episodes and you're trying to tease that someone's gonna die, it's really hard for me to take you seriously when I know there's 3 more episodes to go. So, and I was not watching this while it aired, by the way, just to make that clear. I watched this all in one sitting right when it ended.
I was watching weekly, for those wondering.
So for me, like, I knew there was more episodes, and so them teasing the whole episode that they're not going to make it off this planet. I mean, at a certain point, I actually was starting to believe it. I'm like, maybe they're actually going to do it, and they're going to introduce another variant in episode 4, and that's how they're going to continue. But no, I thought the plot device they used in order to have them find them was an interesting one.
Yeah.
Being a level for your own variant is interesting.
Well,
I liked her as a character, though.
Hold up, because that's like, is it them falling in love, or is that they were both gonna die? Is that the variant? Is that
having watched through episode 6? I think it's
dying.
More them dying.
Yeah,
both of them dying. Having watched the end, because
they gotta
later
do some
in
stuff.
the show, you definitely start seeing that. Now, I think our Loki not the variant Loki. I think our Loki though was falling in love.
Right.
But for her, it was more they were going to die, and I think it more had to do with trust than anything else.
Yeah.
At that point, they trust each other, and that's not a thing that a Loki does.
Right. For the future of this
trust.
episode, we will be referencing them as Loki and Sylvie, just to make it easy. But so episode 3 was kind of a low for me. I just they were just walking around and talking. Yes, it built a relationship between them, and aside from her teasing that everybody in the TVA are variants, it didn't really contribute anything. But then we got into episode 4, and for me, episode 4 is my favorite episode. I thought they were answering all the questions. We were finding out new things, and
the way it ends.
Mobius got involved. Yeah, they zapped Mobius, and I was like, no, like what? Yeah. And then they zapped.
Well, then didn't they also?
Then they zapped Loki, but when they zapped Loki, I was like, oh, that's not the end of Loki.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, but
and then that's the only one with the post-credit scene. I was like,
when they
what?
first did that to Mobius, I was like, no.
Yeah. Because you think that's it. You think they're gone after that.
Yeah, because at that point they hadn't shown, so for all you knew, he was.
Yeah, and then they did it to Loki, and I was like, did they just kill the lead? And then there's the post-credit scene, and I'm like, thank God they did.
That was one shock of a post-credit scene.
Then you're like, oh, what is going on? There's more Lokis?
Was definitely
and then you got to retroactively think, oh, so Mobius is here too.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're kind of like, whew.
Honestly, I want to say episode 4 is probably my favorite, and then episode 5 is probably my next favorite. Episode 5 was really good.
Yeah, it was very fun,
It definitely switched my expectations of what this show could be, because, episodes 2 through 4 are taking themselves super duper seriously.
Yeah.
Like, episode 5 was like, let's kick back a little. Let's have some fun with this idea.
Yeah.
And it really was just fun.
Yeah. Who's your favorite Loki variant, and why is it Alligator Loki?
Alligator Loki, because he's wearing a hat.
And he gives no fuck.
I just love the fact that he's like, is that a Loki? Do you not see the horns?
Yeah. No, my favorite part was when he's like, and there's an alligator version, and I can't even say I'm surprised to see that anymore. Like, with the stuff I've seen, I'm not even, that doesn't even shock me.
I don't know, it was a really cool thing to see all those variants.
Yeah.
It was very fun, I honestly wish we had more of that.
Yeah, I will make a gripe. Like, there was so much promotional material, and with a lot of the images and stuff of the President Loki, and then he was kind of just thrown away really fast, and I wish we could have seen more of that.
Right, and even going into a second season, I don't think we'll re-pick up this idea. So, out of all the things that didn't get done, I felt like, spending more time with these variants definitely one of the worst parts.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I have to rewatch it again, but a cool Easter egg, if this is true, is when Mobius is driving the car in episode 5, when he saves Sylvie, and they're running from the storm, he turns right to go left.
I did not notice, but if that's the case, that would be great. Nice little Cars reference in there.
I thought that was awesome.
Because he's Lightning McQueen.
Ka-chow! But yeah, and then we got that was a nice scene, too, between Loki and Sylvie when they're just, sitting and next to each other, and he, puts the blanket around her. And we start to see that these characters are growing and that he's kind of falling for her and having a connection. And over the course of the show, it's weird, how it's basically is only a couple days after Avengers, but I'd argue that he has gained more character growth in the show than from Avengers to Loki than he has from Avengers to Infinity War. He's kind of surpassed himself in a way.
I think that was the point, to be honest, of the show.
Yeah.
We know where Loki ended up in his death in our original timeline, so really branching it off means we need to create either we had to create a better Loki or a worse Loki, and what the showrunners chose, at least for now, I don't know for future seasons, but for now they chose to show us a Loki that's better than the one that's been killed.
Oh no, he's shocked. After that finale, I can tell you that man found love, and she ripped it away from him. He's going full bad next season.
That's why I was like, this could change,
Yeah.
but you're right. As of episode 5, when that was going down, yes, I felt like he had surpassed him.
Okay.
I don't know if he'd actually surpassed. I think he was on
Yeah, he's
level
on
with
par, but
with
yeah.
Thor Ragnarok's version of him.
Yeah.
Because he was trusting Thor by the end of Ragnarok.
Yeah.
But yeah, then going into episode 5 ended with them walking through it, and
Ripped to classic
I don't
Loki.
know. It was just I guess I didn't I don't know what my original expectations was, but after watching it, it definitely wasn't what I expected.
Yeah, so going in, I was like, it's either going to be Kang, as everybody was saying, and we're going to meet the new big bad, quote unquote, of the entire MCU Phase 4, or I thought it was going to be another Loki variant, and we had seen in the promotional materials of the show and the trailers of Loki in the Asgardian king outfit ruling everything, and I was like, how cool would it have been for Loki to see a version of himself who has everything he has ever wanted, like wanted to be king, wanted to be loved, wanted to be worshipped, and have everything, and offer him that and be like, yo, you can come and take all this if you want, like it is yours. And I think that dilemma was, would he want to go there, or would he want to go back to the TVA and stop these guys and do the right thing? That would have been a really cool dynamic too, but they went a completely different direction, which was, I see what they were doing, but to me I thought what I just proposed would have been a lot better for the show and the character.
No kidding. I hadn't even thought of that, but I would have gladly taken that. I don't know. Again, I think it's a nice build up for Phase 4, but outside of that, like I don't feel it should have been the season finale. I felt like there was more to go, and like you finish the season, obviously there's more to go. But for now, that's what we're stuck with. Like that is the season finale.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of talking. A lot of talking.
Oh yeah, Kang is a exposition dump.
Exposition. And there's nothing wrong with exposition,
right,
but it went for almost the entire length of the episode.
Yeah.
I like that jump scare, though, when they first entered the building.
Yeah.
That became the meme central.
And, I mean, it's okay because she's a side character and is not the main character, but I feel like we were kind of getting somewhere with Sylvie, and she was going somewhere, but I think at least it's good writing that she stays true to her goal, and her goal is to take down whatever did this to her, because she's grown up her entire life as a victim of the TVA and this organization, what they've done to her. So, yeah, she pulls the Star-Lord and hits Thanos at the end. She kills Kang, and it sucks, and it triggers the rest of the MCU, and they had to do that to trigger the rest of the MCU, but it just is such a hard pill to swallow, man.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't what I was expecting, and you've seen her grow as a character throughout the season, and for me it was definitely one of those, it felt like it was a backpedal, but again, looking forward, it was a way to break Loki.
Yeah.
To really break him, truly.
Because he is,
and I think
finally found somebody to trust, and then you just rip that away from him.
Right, we never got to see like Thor betray him or anything. Like he died before anything could happen to that relationship, where he has straight up been betrayed.
Yeah.
And it's interesting where it's going, but it's one of those times where knowing a second season is literally like months away, a year away, but it's like we really don't know when another season's coming, so for now this is what we sit on.
Right.
And before we get another season, there's going to be a lot of stuff that builds on the Phase 4, and my worry is that like variants aren't going to get talked about too much until Doctor Strange comes out next year.
Or Spider-Man.
Fingers crossed that Spider-Man is what I hope it is.
Yes. And then she yeets him back into the TVA, but it's not the same TVA, which I was like, oh, Jesus, what is going on? When he's like,
that was a shock.
Yeah. And then attention to detail that somebody pointed out to me on the internet is Mobius is always very loose fitting with his tie and has really ruffled up hair, but that Mobius, his tie's all the way up at the top and he's got gelled up hair, and I was like, Wow. So because it's just that's a different guy.
Wow, I didn't
A
even
subtle
notice it because
detail.
I feel like if I'd noticed those subtle details, I would have been like, "Uh oh,
Yeah.
this ain't ours." But yeah, for me, I was in complete shock. I was like, "Oh no!" And then the season just ended.
Yeah. So now he's
I
been
mean,
betrayed by his lover after finally opening up and trusting somebody, and now he's got no friends, and so he's in a very dark place.
no kidding. Great way to end it though. Like
Yeah.
the actual end scene is great, not the rest of the episode's okay.
Yeah, and just teasing that this new version of Kang, the Conqueror, as they call him, is now running the show or has an imprint on the multiverse now.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I think I liked most about Loki is its contribution to Phase 4. I loved its introduction of the multiverse, and honestly, I wish Loki had been the first show, because if Loki had been the first show, I feel like WandaVision could have went, all right,
Oh,
they've
okay.
already kind of introduced it
I
here,
see what you're
so
saying.
he can totally be a variant. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just my one gripe with WandaVision, and I really don't like it because I don't know. You can only pull something like that once. You bring Evan Peters back again,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have the same effect. But having him show up at that doorstep was really just the whole internet just went
Oh,
crazy
yeah.
because
I
we
wasn't
thought
I
it
wasn't
was
watching the show, but I saw that and I was like, whoa.
right, and everyone just thought it was the X-Men version, that this was the introduction to the multiverse, and then it just wasn't. And I feel like if Loki had come first, introduced variants, then they absolutely could just use that as a plot device.
Yeah.
But oh well.
Yeah, still solid show. It's my favorite of the three. I just love Tom Hiddleston and what he does. Love Mobius. I like the world that they've built, and I love how it affects the future.
Absolutely. And so then, talking about the future, we have a few movies coming up in the future.
Yep.
So let's just say which one our most anticipated is for this year, because I think we have different ones. Mine is Eternals.
Over Spider-Man?
Well, I don't know. So granted, Spider-Man I'm not sure is actually going to come out.
Okay.
If Spider-Man does come out, it will be Spider-Man.
Okay, yeah, same.
But I'm not 100% sure Sony's going to release it.
Okay,
So
fair enough.
I'm going to go with Eternals.
Okay. I'm leaning more towards Shang-Chi, personally. And that is the one that is coming out first, so I guess we will talk about that. So I've been in the mood for some good fighting movies recently. You know, I saw Snake Eyes, didn't really hit it for me, so I'm hoping Shang-Chi can pick up the slack. It seems from the trailers, it's got solid trailers. I mean, it's got some cool cameo teasers. We saw Wong and we saw Abomination, and a lot of people are speculating that what is her name, Val? She's gonna pick up Abomination, because I've seen that they're making like a Dark Avengers. You know, like she got a Captain America, she got a Black Widow, she's gonna get a Hulk with Abomination. So who knows if that's coming?
Cool.
But yeah, and then looking at the trailers, I mean, the visuals and stuff look really cool and up to par with what Marvel's capable of. But it seems like a very personal story between this dude facing his dad and the legacy that his dad has created, who is the Mandarin, the actual Mandarin, and the leader of the Ten Rings that was holding Tony Stark in the beginning. But yeah, just this personal battle between this Shang-Chi and his dad, I think, is what's going to be the heart and soul of this film.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely looks good. First trailer, I wasn't fully sold on it, but I
same.
just recently went and saw Jungle Cruise in IMAX, and I got to see the IMAX trailer, so the second trailer, but in the IMAX format, and I was just blown away by the visuals and the story. Like, I was like, I have to see this in IMAX, and I actually skipped Black Widow in IMAX because I didn't feel like I needed to see it again. I felt like if I never saw the 20 minutes of IMAX footage, I'd live. And after seeing it, I was like, yep, I'm good.
Yep.
But with this one, I'm like, I absolutely need to see the IMAX version of this because, yeah, it looks great.
Yeah, and oh wait, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
All right. Side note, I don't know if this is confirmed, but I'm a huge fan of one of my ex-K-pop group member, Jackson Wang from China, and this is a very heavily Chinese influenced film. I don't know if he's writing the soundtrack for this film or not, but if he is, that's extra points, and you guys should watch out for the soundtrack. Just a little side bit there. But what were you gonna say?
Just for me, the reason why Eternals is over this movie, in my opinion, is because I really like ensemble movies.
Okay. Yeah,
And
this is a
on
big
top
one.
of and on top of ensemble movies, I really enjoy futuristic ensemble movies, and that's what it really looks like it's trying to be. It's like taking place probably slightly in the future to the cinematic universe we know right now, at least from the looks of it. And also just the cast. I mean,
Oh, not
the cast just
lights
looks
out.
outstanding.
They got Jon Snow and Robb Stark of Winterfell. But yeah, and we've only had a teaser, right?
Yes, we've only had one teaser.
Okay, and I mean, it looks like there's some exposition, backstory stuff of them going through history, at least in the beginning of the film, it looked like in the teaser. But what somebody pointed out after Loki came out and after we have this multiverse is now we have different history and now we have different events. And there's a line in the trailers where she's like, we've kind of stepped back and let the humans in civilization do their thing until now, and so I'm thinking, is this
I'm
split
curious of when,
what
when
causes
until
the
now
till
is.
now? So it'll be interesting. I don't know a whole lot about the characters or what the story is. I know that the director has got some critical acclaim recently, and so it's always cool bringing on skilled talent behind the camera like that. So I'm looking forward to it
Yeah,
too.
it's definitely, but again, this is definitely another weird instance where this movie was supposed to come out November 2020. So not only is it
Oh
behind
yeah,
all three Marvel shows, because at the point of its release, okay, sorry, two. By the point of its release, the only show that was supposed to be out was Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It was literally the only things that in Phase 4 was supposed to be Black Widow, Falcon, Winter Soldier, and then it was going to be it. And so now we're sitting here. There's been three Marvel shows. Black Widow's come out, and we're going to have Shang-Chi at the end of, or sorry, the beginning of September. And then this one's finally coming out. So I'm curious if
and What
there's.
If would already have happened too, right?
Right, and What If comes out in August. So, I mean, I imagine that there's something about it that it can be released wherever, where I feel like you can't swap Spider-Man and Doctor Strange.
Yeah, those
It's
seem
always
like
going to have to go in that order.
yeah,
Or heck, even Thor: Love and Thunder. Like, I feel like they're keeping them where they are. Like, I think at this point, if let's say there's another massive COVID delay, Thor: Love and Thunder can't come out before Guardians 3. Period.
right.
Because of just the way the plot works.
Yeah.
So I feel like Marvel got very fortunate with these delays they've had, is that none of these films were really tied down and needed to be released in a certain order, so now they're able to just be flexible with it.
Right.
But I think leading into some of these future movies, they're definitely going to have to release them in a certain order.
Yeah, and definitely while Shang-Chi seems like a very like contained personal movie, I could see Eternals being this bigger, grander, epic movie, just at least from the vibes that the trailer gives off.
It's giving me a Guardians vibe where
But it's a little bit more serious than Guardians, it feels like.
right, a more serious version of Guardians, which is why for me I'm super excited for it.
Yeah.
And especially back when it was originally supposed to release, when it was Eternals or Black Widow, it was leagues above Black Widow because I wasn't very interested in Black Widow because she was
dead. It was
dead.
already played out. We already saw what was going on there. Yeah. And then.
But looking towards the future outside of Eternals, Spider-Man. Not sure if it's. I'm optimistic it'll come out in December, but I'm not going to sit here and say Sony will absolutely release it because you never know. I mean, Spider-Man's a big movie for Sony, and unlike Black Widow, Sony really can't afford for it to be a financial disappointment because Sony doesn't have a lot of brands.
Yeah, I know it's
IPs.
not in the MCU, but I think a big indicator for how well Spider-Man will do is how well Venom does.
Right, and if Venom doesn't come out in time, I very highly doubt that Spider-Man will come out in time.
Right, and that will just shift everything back.
Or if Venom doesn't make enough money, I could see Sony. As far as I know, Sony has put out only one movie during the pandemic, and that is Peter Rabbit 2, I believe. That is the only movie they put out because they have waited and waited and waited. So I'm interested for Spider-Man to come out, but the fact that it's August and we haven't seen a teaser or anything is making me a little more, worried.
We have the logo.
Yeah, logos.
Yeah.
Logos are great. Just like the logo you're looking at right now.
Yeah.
But moving into 2022, I'm really looking forward to Doctor Strange.
Yeah, that one's like a big. event, connective tissue for the MCU, at least what they've been talking about for it.
Right, and it's crazy because you're going from Doctor Strange 1 to this one, and like the hype level for this new one is leagues above.
I think with his introduction and importance at least in Infinity War, I mean, he wasn't really in Endgame, but with Infinity War, it really gave us an introduction as to why this character matters so much for the entirety of the MCU.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he played such a vital role. I feel like he played a vital role in the fight against Thanos rather than just Infinity War. Like, if he weren't in it, I think the movies would have been super different.
Yeah, and hold up. I'm just thinking right now. Like, they didn't really talk. Like, yeah, Cap put the stones back, but what happened to Does Doctor Strange not have the stone anymore? Because Thanos destroyed him with the stones. Like, that was Doctor Strange's, right?
Yeah. So
he's got no more time control.
Wow, the boss fight can't be like the first one. How sad.
Yeah, I mean they already played their card with that one, but it'll be interesting to see how. Like, I mean, I don't think he's technically not the sorcerer supreme yet. So maybe we will see him ascend to that, and even if he does, how will he do that with or without the time stone? Interesting. I didn't think about that till now.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
But and then we have Thor: Love and Thunder. Really looking forward to that, only because of how good Ragnarok was.
Did you see the behind the scenes picture that him and Taika posted? Thor's looking jacked, bro.
No kidding. And then after that, we start moving into some lesser films. Just kidding. No, we're not, because that is Black Panther
Wakanda
2.
Forever, man.
Yeah,
I'm very interested to see
the Marvels.
how they will handle that too. Rest in peace, Chadwick.
Yeah, definitely more interested in how they're going to handle it than the actual movie, because I feel like if they don't handle it properly, it doesn't matter what the movie is.
Right.
So then in November 2022, we have The Marvels. And I've played the Avengers game. They had Kamala Khan as Miss Marvel in that. And after playing the game, I'm actually super excited to see her. I'm excited to see her Disney Plus show, and I'm excited to also see the Marvels. And in 2022, I'm actually not sure what Marvel shows are coming out that year, because they haven't put dates on anything. I know that we are getting Moon Knight at some point, She-Hulk, and a few other shows. We are getting Hawkeye later this year.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for that. And then 2023, we get Guardians 3, finally.
Hopefully it's more like Guardians 1 and not like Guardians 2, as you heard from my opinions from the last podcast.
And we have, I think the last 2 confirmed films we have so far is Ant-Man 3.
Right, Quantumania, which Kang is credited to be in.
Fan 4 Stick 3.
No.
Yes. Third attempt.
Does Blade have a release date or no?
Blade does not have a release date. I don't think it's going to be in Phase 4.
Okay. And then...
Oh, and we have the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special in late 2022.
Ah. Interesting.
And while they shoot Guardians 3 and that, they're going to be shooting the ride footage for Guardians of the Galaxy I don't remember what the Cosmic Rewind at Disney's Walt Disney World.
Interesting.
So, yeah, a lot is going on in Marvel, and I can't wait to do some more podcasts talking about the future stuff. But, until that stuff comes out, we're just going to have to wait it out.
Yeah. We're just kind of going along with the flow, seeing how these get released. We still don't know if they're getting released, so just stick with us and we'll keep you posted. But thanks again for joining us for another episode. Hope you guys enjoyed. We're going to be back again next week with a brand new episode. So take care.
Yep, see you next time.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Timebreaker Podcast.
If you did enjoy it, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe, and make sure to ring that notification bell for new episodes every Wednesday.
See you next week.